Thank you very much. So first of all, I would like to thank Professor Kim for inviting me to give this lecture. I would have liked to be there in your university, but anyway, we can do it online. I hope we can meet soon there. And I thank Professor Kim for this invitation. I also all the program of the European the Association of Korean Studies in Europe for this program of Apple that through the help of Korean Foundation was made possible for many universities in Europe to have this kind of lecture, and that I think is a very, very important, interesting program for us here in Europe. So as the Professor Kim said, my topic today will try to introduce a little about Korean women's religious beliefs and practices in Korea today. First of all, so as also Professor Kim said, my main topic of research has been for a long period of time the religious practices and rituals and beliefs of Korean women. So I try to look to different rituals in the different religions of Korea, Buddhism, Shamanism, Christianity in today's Korea, and how how these rituals and beliefs influence their lives. No, so I try to see about the meaning of these religious rites and practices, and what is the function they fulfill in society and in the life of the people who practices. So, as you know, rituals, but they may have different functions. They are, of course, religious functions because they are religious rituals and beliefs, but they also fulfill other functions in society, like social functions, creating the idea of community, of group. And this is what has been one of my last topic of research, looking at how different spaces or groups are created in contemporary Korea through the religious practices. And then have another functions, personal functions, and so on. Probably maybe because all of you are studying about Korea, so probably you have studied different practices or rituals in Korea, and maybe you are familiar with some of them. And you may have seen what is the role they fulfill socially and personally. So I will try with this in this lecture to answer some questions that I've been working through these years of research. Now, some of the questions I try to ask myself when I try to research about Korean religions are some of these, for instance. What is the actual spirit of the Korean women believers in the religious practices? What is the symbolic meaning that women give to these everyday practices? Because I'm especially interested in the daily practices of how daily life is influenced by their religious ritual practices and beliefs. How they influence their lives, and how women express their social and cultural realities through their relationship with especially with the female divinities. Because another topic I will mention later on a little bit, is the special role that some female divinities, some female goddess and so on, have in the religious practices of women in Korea. So these are some of the questions I try to answer through my research, and I will try to talk during these lectures, where I will try to talk some of these topics. So the contents of my lecture today will be more or less. I will try. I don't know if I will have time to go through all of them, but I will try to. First of all, I will give a general vision of some of the characteristics of religious practices in Korea, especially in the 20th and 21st century. Then I will just briefly present some Korean religions in numbers, just the number of believers of the different religions. And then we will enter in the main topic of our lecture, that will be Korean religions and gender, especially Korean women religious beliefs and practices. And inside of these religious beliefs and practices, especially about the role of Korean women shaman in Korea today. So let us go. First of all, I would like to, as I said, to introduce few features that I think are important to understand how are religions in Korea. Professor Kim told me that you have been studying something about religions during the three kingdoms, during Koryo, or during the Joseon period. So you probably saw how many religions along the history of Korea have been coming from different places to the peninsula, and they have ground there in the peninsula. So probably if you are interested in religions in general, in religious practices, probably Korea will be a very, very interesting place to study to study religions. As I mentioned here, I consider Korea as a perfect lab for the study of religion and religious practices, mainly for this diversity of religions that along history have been present in the peninsula, and the way these different religions have been relating among themselves. So I think it's a very interesting place to study religion. Some of the I would like just to mention some of these general characteristics of the way religions enter and come to be practiced in Korea. For in general, the Korean people in Korea are eager to welcome foreign religious spirits and tradition and try to make them their own. And this brings two main characteristics, I think, in this way of assimilating foreign religions in Korea. Mainly, first of all, when the religions come to the peninsula, as probably you study when you study the Three Kingdoms and this period, especially from the 4th century mainly. So the main religions from China came to the peninsula, Buddhism, Confucianism, Taoism, and they were accepted in the different kingdoms in different ways, but as the time went on, they were quite well accepted. And mainly when in the first step, when they first arrived in the peninsula, this religion, trying to know them, the people there, try to learn in depth and to practice it as it was in their original form. To try, as I say here, trying to reproduce the ways how was practiced and believed in their places of origin. So when the Buddhists and Confucianists arrived in the 4th century in Korea, so first of all, the people there, they tried to get what were the real meaning, or where were the practices and beliefs as they are in their places where these religions originated. Mainly was from China, or from Buddhism in India, and so on, and try to sit there to learn about the main, and so they are very interested in knowing very deeply the scriptures, the sutras in Buddhism, on the classics, the classic books of Confucianism, and so on, and trying to understand them in the most as they were in their origins, as I said. And a similar way, something later on, as Christianity went in the peninsula, happened something similar, They will try to learn about the Bible and learn very deeply the Bible and so on. So they are very interested in studying the original scriptures and the original beliefs of these religions. And this will be one of the characteristics, I think, important. And then in a second step will be to try to Koreanize this religion, no? To try to make them their own religions, no? And to giving them, as I say here, to giving them a Korean face and make the practice to fit their own worldview, no? And their lifestyle. So to make them to be something that is proper Korean, no? Even if they are religions that come from outside, from foreign countries, but they try to transform them and to organize them and the rituals and the beliefs in a way that are easily understood by the Koreans. And in this process will be very important. That is one of the reasons why all this phenomenon of syncretism, where different elements of different religions are taken, so that these religions are closer to the people. So, for instance, I just put here the example of Buddhism and Shamanism. Buddhism, when first arrived to the peninsula, so tried to get some elements from Shamanism that was the autochthonous, the religion what was there in this process of Koreanizing the religions. For instance, these processes of taking elements from different religions. For instance, I was just telling you about the sample of Buddhism and Shamanism, that both Buddhism after coming to the peninsula tried to introduce in their own ritual, especially some elements proper of Shamanism, so that they can accepted better by the people in the peninsula. And something similar will happen later on also with Confucianism, in the way they understood, in their metaphysical way of understanding Yi and Qi and so on, other elements. And even also for later on for Christian churches or the new religions like Won Buddhism or Chondogyo and so on. So there will be another characteristic, I think. Another element that I think it is also interesting to see in general about Korean religions is the nationalistic phase and national pride, especially in the moments of crisis, of attack from other countries and so on. Religions became, in different moments of history, also an element for unity of the country, of the people. And this is common for all the religions, so for Buddhists and for Confucianism, even Christianity. In those moments of history when there was this crisis, so they became an element also to bring this unity and to try to overcome those bad moments and those moments of crisis. So this makes a very rich historical picture of Korea. But then when we reach 20th century, a time, especially time with the invasion of Japanese, especially also with the division of the country in two, this make also to rethink about where was the role of religions in the Korean Peninsula. They make a very complex situation, complexity of Korean religion, especially after this division of the country of this colonial period. So from the second part of the 20th century until nowadays, where there are new challenges that the different religions have to face. There were new role for religions, and the different religions have to look for their place inside of this new situation in Korean society. So the different religions trying to answer to this new situation in different ways. That is why I think, especially in this. You know that from 20th century and in 21st century, Especially Christianity has growth, especially in the Korean Peninsula, very special, especially in South Korea, of course, especially taking a very important also role in society, no? In comparison at the way other religions have developed, especially in contemporary Korea. And their role mainly in this, of course, mainly because of the role they play in education, health, social assistance, especially after the Korean War, after the division of the, especially also in the education of the elites. They have a special, very important role also in Korea. And they have grown very, very fast in the last years, no, in Korea, in comparison also with other countries in Asia. It's a very special phenomenon, the one in the peninsula. For the other tradition, that they were the traditional religions that they have been in the peninsula for many centuries, like Buddhism, no, Confucianism, and so on. Somehow after the division of the countries, they were somehow shocked by this situation, and sometimes they didn't know very well how to answer to the new situation. So they have to readapt especially their practices, no? For instance, just to say one example, for instance, Buddhism, that during all the Choson period have to leave the urban places and the urban places to go to the countryside, right? Because of the Confucian domination of the religious because Confucianism was the dominant way of thinking, and especially the rituals. So Buddhism have to leave to the countryside, and after in 20th century they have to go back to the cities, but they were not prepared to this coming back to the city. So they have to reorganize themselves to learn new ways of relation with the believers and so on, with the people in the urban places, in the cities, and so on. So the process of transformation and to adapt to the new situation was, I think, more difficult for this traditional religion than for the new religions that were coming to Korea from the beginning of the 20th century and 19th century. So that is this process. Also, new religions, like I said before, Wonpulgyo and so on, have to also to adapt to the new situation, but they are also new. So for them was easier to adapt to this new situation. And they have also to answer to the new political changes, to the new political changes that were taking place especially in South Korea. So this, I think, can be some of the main challenges and the global situation of religions in general in the Korean Peninsula. Just to continue, just to mention some few numbers about how are growing the different religions and they are changing their. Just to say, as you can see in this table, you can see how about 50% of the population they consider themselves as they don't have any religion, or they don't practice any religion. But the other 50% approximately about Christianity, these are the last statistic published by the government of 2015. We have about 27% declare themselves as Christians. Inside of Christian, about 20% are considered they are Protestants. About 8% they are Catholic, and Buddhism about 15.5%. No, and you can see how is the evolution of different religions. You can see that Buddhism in the last year has gone down, and Christianity went up in the 2005, and they went a little down in 2015. No? Just to have a picture, a general picture of how is the situation of the different religions. This will be in the following, just to consider only this, considering the total number of religion of people who declare themselves practicing any religion. We can see here, Pulgyo is the Buddhism, right? Buddhism, you can see better the way they are, the evolution of these different religions. Keshingyo is the Protestants, how it changed. Chonjugyo, the Catholic, you can see a little how is the evolution in the from 1995 to 2015. Just to give you a general picture of the religions in Korea today. So I wanted to talk now about our main topic today, that was this idea of Korean religions and gender, or the women practices of Korean religions. You may ask me why I put this the flag of South Korea. I will now mainly talk about South Korea, but I think it can be is also applied to all Korean Peninsula, because also from the historical point of view, I think many of the things I will say will be okay for both, for all the peninsula. But you may ask me why you put now here the Korean flag. I think the Korean flag may reflect also this Korean idea of religions and gender. I see another characteristic that I didn't mention before in general about Korean religion is this division of religion by gender, because of historical, social, and economic reasons, make this for many centuries, make Korean religion to be divided by the idea of gender. And as you know, this Korean flag, right? The main part here is, as you see, is yin and yang, as you very well know. You can hear the explanation of the Korean flag, Taegukgi, right? And you can see that there is a part that is yang and the part that is yin, and then we have heaven and earth, right? These four elements. And normally, as you know, in the yin and yang idea, yang is become the part of masculine part, no, the main part, and yin is mainly the female part, the women part. And I think for many centuries, this yang related with heaven was also mainly the religion, represent mainly the religion of men in Korea, and mainly was related with the Confucian rituals, right? As you very well know, as you may know also, mainly from the second part of Koryo dynasty, mainly from the Joseon dynasty, Confucianism was taking very important role in society in Korea. And one of the main elements of this Confucian introducing their thinking and way of organizing society was mainly through the rituals, right? And the main ritual, you may know, it was this cult to these rituals to the ancestors, to the death of the family. And for me, these rituals were done only by men, As you can see in the picture, this is a picture taken a few years ago. So still is a ritual. As you can see, there are no women at all here. Although nowadays women also sometimes take part in these rituals, but it's mainly a ritual for men. Men were the main participants in the rituals, and this was a society built is mainly all these beliefs and rituals and this relation with heaven and with the ancestors and so on was mainly done by men, right? We can say that the Confucian rituals and beliefs and way of organizing was a religion led by men mainly, and for this part of male part of this religious life in Korea. So as women could not take part, no? And also I just put this because of the importance that was in this patriarchal way of understanding society was the family trees and genealogy books, no? The Chokpo was very important part of maintaining this kind of religion, these beliefs in the society, especially for the organizing the society, and we're very related with this element. All these rituals was the way to keep this understanding of how family was going was organized. Yeah, no? So this is just to say just to see now, I just put this part to see now the difference with the way women organize their religious beliefs. So the other part in this gender and religion vision of religious life in Korea, the other part will be the Jin, right, related with earth and with this exogram of the I Ching. So for Korean women, if we look at today's historical, cultural, and religious characteristics of Korean women believers, and how they have organized their everyday practice, they are very much influenced by these cultural, historical processes that were taking place in the peninsula. So you have to understand all these processes of these experiences of Korean women as a long historical processes that have been shaping the religious experience of Korean women, no? And influenced by all these changes that were taking in the peninsula, in the history of peninsula, and how these different religions were taking a dominant part in the life of the society, going first of all, this Buddhist influence from the Three Kingdoms and the Unified Shilla, especially in Koryo, and from the second part of Koryo and Chosun, the influence of Confucianism. And all these changes were taking a very strong influence in the life, in the religious life, and in the life in general of Korean women. That make that many of the practices that will take place, that will be practiced by the women in Korea, have to be related mainly with the other religions that were not Confucianism. No, we can see in this picture a ritual of Buddhist ritual to a Bodhisattva, to Buddha, here in a temple in Seoul. And you can see that mainly there are women in these rituals. You can see here is another in women praying in another temple in Pongmunsa, in Ganghwa-do, in the island of Ganghwa. And also in the churches, we can see many women and so on. The religious experience of women, mainly during this in these other practices that were not the Confucian practices, were themselves, they were going to be identified themselves through history, especially with the religious figures and practices that in the religious tradition were related to the welfare and the living and the dead, and in a special way with the protection of the home and the family. So as the men were mainly worried about how to relate with society and how the family, how the ancestors and so on, the women will main their worry and their religious practice mainly directed to those divinities, gods, and so on that were related to protect, and where goal was to protect the home and the family, because they were the ones in charge of protecting the family, inside of the family. So many of their practices will be related with this protection of the home and the family, and to bring together the living and the dead in a harmonic way. So the Korean women found in their religious experience the ritual rites and the cult of female deities a place to rest and regain energies in times of crisis. That was another element that I think is important in the religious life of women in Korea, is their relation with divine female deities or female divinities. In the different religions, we take different phases, right? But the relation between these divinities, deities, and the women will be somehow very similar. For instance, in the case of Buddhism, the figure of Kwanseum Bosal, the Bodhisattva of compassion, no? Avalokitesvatara Bodhisattva, will be one of the main figures for the female Buddhist believers and practitioners, especially in the different temples, or the temples, the figure or the images of Kwanseum Bosal will have a very predominant place in all these, in the temples and in the rituals that in the daily practices that women will do during their lives, no? Also, the figure of the Virgin Mary for the Catholics will be a very special figure in the life of Korean women, in their practices, in their activities in the churches, and so on. And in the case of shamanism, also, there will be many different divinities, many goddesses that will take the female aspect, and especially I just put here Pari Konju, that you may mention, Pari Tegi, that is this goddess that help the dead people to go to the other world, and it has a very important role also in some of the rituals of shamanism. So you can see here, this is a shaman doing a ritual. Yes, I put also to see the difference, as you saw before, the ritual of men in the Confucianism that were very, very ordered, everything not very colorful. Here is all the opposite, no? Very, very colorful, and sometimes very chaotic, and so on. Just to see the different, you can see all the different gods and the different, the altar with the different fruits and elements that will be used during the shamanic rituals. So this part, or especially shaman, as you know, in Korean, shamanism can be called musok or mugyo, And the main function of shamanism in Korea is to try to unite these two elements, no? The element of heaven and the element of earth. And the shaman is the person who tries to make this bridge or this union between heaven and earth, and they do through different rituals and dances and so on. No? So this connection between these two worlds is the main goal of shamanism, and the shamans, no, are the one in charge of that, to do that. And the shamans, as you can see in this picture, in the rituals, try to connect. And this, you can see in this picture, this shaman. This is a shaman that was living in Incheon, no? It's a city near Seoul, and she in the ritual goes on this on top of the people and try to make this connection between the other world and this world, no, the heaven and the earth. And in this situation of connection between the two worlds, try to transmit, to communicate the words of the gods and to the people, and the words of the people to the gods, no, through the rituals. So shamans, no, just to introduce, just because we are coming to the end, but just to say a few words, because shamans have played a very important role in this religious worldview of women in Korea. And they have played an important role because of this. Many of women that they couldn't take part in the rituals that were reserved only for men. They look for their religious practices, their religious life, and their religious help through the shamans, through the women shaman, and they will be those leaders, religious leaders, who will help women also to find their place and help them in their role as protector of the family and the home. And so in Korea there were mainly two types of shaman that we call mudang, is the more normal way to call them, or manshin. There are many names, but the more common is mudang. And there were mainly two types, no? Two types of mudang. Those who were they became mudang because of being possessed by the spirit, or those who were sesum mudang, that were the ones who were for hereditary. They were become mudang because their grandmothers or their mothers were also shamans. And some of the main characteristics of these shamans were mainly, their main functions were to be intermediaries between this world and the world of divinities and humans through the ritual. And the main ritual for shamanism is called the kut. And another function very important was the healing, the function of healing. Another one, the divination, to predict, to say what will happen to the family, will have a good health. If they are economically, they will be go well in the future, and so on. Other function was try to preserve the Korean traditional art and culture. And this is done in many different ways, and very creative, exchange, adapting themselves to the new situation, and so on. They have also, of course, a priesthood function or leadership, religious leadership inside for those who follow them, and special relationship with ancestors, transmitting the words of the ancestors, and to try to make happy also the ancestors, and to reconcile the ancestor with the living, so that they can all live in peace. And also, as I said before, they are going to play an important role also in the women's world, and especially in the religious women's experiences. So there is a process through which the Korean shaman become shamans. Especially, I refer here mainly to those the type of shaman that are become shamans by the possession of the spirits of the gods. So they go through different steps in their way to become shaman. They go first through a period of spirit possession or thesis. It's called Shimpyeong. So that where their main god protector possessed them and made them first sick. So they have to overcome this sickness. They have to, after they overcome this sickness and they accept this possession by the gods, they have to go through a ritual of initiation that is called Nerinkut, so that they can be accepted by the other shamans to be part of the shamans community. And finally, once they after they go through this Nerinkut, this initiation, they go under the protection of a more old shaman, or more a shaman who will become her teacher, and is called the mother in the gods. No, their mother in the gods, because this older shaman will teach the neophyte, the new shamans, how to do their ritual, how to behave as a shaman, how they do their divination. So it's a training period, a period that they learn how to become independent shamans. So after they learn all this process, they become independent shamans. So I just put some. I would like to put some pictures of the ritual, because Professor Kim, I don't know if how many.
Yeah, maybe 5 minutes, or 3-5 minutes will be fine. Yes.
Okay.
Conclusion.
Okay.
Thank you.
So, okay, thank you. I'm not sure. So just to show some picture of the, just to finish also with. So in this, once they learn their way of become shamans, they start to do their ritual. The main ritual, as I mentioned before, is the kut, is a ritual that have different parts, mainly 12 parts, but they can add some other parts. And in the different part, the shaman is possessed by different gods according to the different part. And the main thing is that they, in this process of possession, they also can communicate also the words of the gods to the people who is taking part in the ritual, that they are called tangol, that they are, or clients, that will be the translation, but those who ask for the ritual. And through this communication, because they have different, according to different different reason to celebrate this ritual. They can be because of health problems, or economic problems, or because of the death of somebody, or any other reason. But normally they are very, very, I would say, very common reasons or problems that we have, all of us we have. So it will be of sickness, or economical problem, of education problem, because we want to pass exams and so on. So they are worried especially of this very human and normal problem that we all of us have, no? So the main way of getting in this process of possession and becoming communication with the gods is through the dances and the music. And the music will be, so through this process, they get in this stage of possession, ecstasy, and so they can enter in communication with the gods. So just to put some pictures of some of these rituals, you can see all the gods around and the altars here with all the foods and so on. This ritual may take can take a long time. Mainly can take about one day from the morning until night, or doing all the different parts of the ritual. Although traditionally it could take more than 3 days. 3 days to do this ritual, but nowadays commonly they start in the morning, and then at night they finish the rituals. This is the end of the ritual, and they are sending away all the spirits before wrapping up the ritual. So I think now we can give some time for, thank you very much for your attention, and I think we can give some time for if you have any questions.